Have you ever wondered why you can clearly know what's right, yet still not do it? Why do you begin with fierce resolve, promise yourself that this time will be different, and then end up repeating the same familiar loop of procrastination, quitting halfway, and disappointing yourself? You're not lacking understanding, and you're not lacking the desire to change, yet it feels as if some inner force keeps pulling you back to the exact same place. Society says you lack discipline, you lack willpower. But Jung believed that the explanation was too simple and dangerous. People don't sabotage themselves without a deeper cause. The problem isn't that you haven't tried hard enough. It's that you are not truly the one controlling your whole mind. Beneath the layer of consciousness you call the ego, there are parts of you that have been denied and repressed. They don't disappear when you ignore them. They keep working in the dark, quietly shaping your choices and behaviors. When they aren't listened to, they will find a way to speak through procrastination, addiction, and self-destructive behaviors you can't even explain. In this video, we are not going to talk about forcing yourself to be stronger. We're going to explore how Carl Jung understood the human mind and how to hack the brain in his true sense of the word. And if this video shows up at the exact moment you need to change, stay. Maybe a deeper part of you is what brought you here. Part 1. Why you keep sabotaging yourself. There is a very particular inner state many people know well, yet rarely stop to face directly. It isn't a crisis, and it isn't exactly obvious suffering. It feels more like a low, lingering ache, as if your life is happening, but not entirely as yours. You still wake up each day, still do what needs to be done, still keep everything fine. But deep inside, there's a vague sense that you are holding something back, or being held back by a force you cannot name. This state doesn't usually break people, it freezes them, and precisely because it doesn't break them, they learn to live with it. They get used to postponing major decisions, used to later, used to not finishing what once made them feel alive. Little by little, blocking yourself becomes such a normal part of life that you stop asking why it exists at all. Think of a simple everyday example. After days of stress, someone tells themselves that tonight they will truly rest, put the phone away early, go to sleep, so tomorrow their mind will be clearer. The decision is completely reasonable. Nothing is vague, nothing is missing. And yet, when night comes, they still pick up the phone, scroll a little, then a little more, until they feel exhausted and ashamed. The important thing isn't the phone, it's the question, what makes a reasonable decision get cancelled out in only a few hours? Jung believed moments like this are not trivial details of life. They are crucial clues. Because there, one thing becomes unmistakable. Human beings do not always act in the direction their conscious mind believes is best. There is a quiet split between what we think we want and what we actually do. And in that distance, self-sabotage is born. What made Jung different from many psychological approaches is that he didn't treat this contradiction as a flaw to fix immediately. He treated it as a fact to understand. For Jung, no psychological behavior is random. When someone repeatedly slows themselves down, blocks themselves, especially right before important turning points, the question is not, why am I weak? But what in me does not want this to happen? We are often taught that we are a unified ego, that if we decide, we simply execute. But lived experience shows that it is rarely true. Instead, A human being is more like a space where many movements coexist. There are desires pulling forward and forces pulling back. When these forces remain unrecognized, they collide in silence, and the result is a prolonged state of stillness. Jung observed that consciousness tends to believe it holds control because it is the only part that can think in language, reason, and narrate a story about the self. But the ability to tell a story is not the same as controlling the entire psychological process. Many important things happen outside that spotlight, and those things are often what decide the direction of a life. To explain this, Jung used a vivid image. Human consciousness is like the light shining on a stage, where you can clearly see what is happening. But behind that light is a vast backstage, where unnoticed drives, memories, emotions and impulses continue to operate. When the backstage and stage do not move in the same direction, the play becomes chaotic, even while the audience still believes everything is following the script. Jung did not deny the role of consciousness or will, but he emphasized that it will only work when it is not fighting unseen, unconscious forces. When you try to move in a direction that a deeper part of you is not ready for, you will always feel as if you are dragging yourself. And over time, you begin to identify with that heaviness. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." He did not say the unconscious must be eliminated. He only pointed out that when you don't recognize it, you don't have real freedom. You are only reacting to forces you don't even know you are reacting to. From this perspective, self-sabotage is not a sentence on who you are. It is a message. It shows that something in your inner life has been ignored, pushed backstage, yet has not disappeared. And as long as that message is not understood, self-blocking will keep appearing in forms that become more and more sophisticated. This part is not meant to give advice or demand that you change immediately. It does only one thing. It invites you to look at your familiar experience under a different light. Not a judging light, but an observing light. Because for Jung, real transformation does not begin with action. It begins with changing how we understand what is happening inside. And if you're still listening, and it feels like these words touch a movement you know well within yourself, maybe that isn't random. If you're brave enough, you can leave a line in the comments answering this question. What usually shows up inside you to slow you down whenever you're about to step into a new direction? Writing it down, or simply becoming aware of what holds you back, doesn't make you weaker. On the contrary, it's the first sign of honesty with yourself. And from that honesty, another path, slower but truer, can begin to open. Part 2. The illusion of the controlling ego. If in the previous part we recognize that self-sabotage is not weakness, but an inner signal, then the next question is almost unavoidable. Who is actually steering your life? This question goes straight into a deep, familiar belief. So familiar it's rarely questioned. The belief that the conscious ego is the one at the wheel. That you think, you decide, you act. That if things haven't changed, you just need more determination, more discipline, better self-control. Carl Jung believed that this seemingly obvious belief is one of the most dangerous illusions of the modern human being. A myth, rarely viewed through psychology, can help illuminate this. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus is condemned to roll a massive boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll back down each time he nears the top. The punishment repeats endlessly. Usually, Sisyphus is seen as a symbol of meaninglessness, but through Jung's lens, the story carries another deeper layer. Sisyphus does not fail because he is weak. He does not lack perseverance or strength. His tragedy lies in the belief that willpower alone can overpower a structure larger than himself. Here, Sisyphus is the image of the ego, convinced that if it tries hard enough, everything will obey. Each time the boulder rolls down, he doesn't question the nature of the punishment. He simply pushes harder. And that is exactly what makes the tragedy endless. Jung saw in this image a frightening similarity with modern people. The more inner resistance we meet, the more we try to control. The more we fail, the tighter we grip our will. To understand why the illusion of control forms, we need to look at the true role of the ego. Jung did not deny the ego. He saw it as the center of consciousness, helping a person orient and survive in practical life. But trouble begins when the ego is placed in the wrong position, when it is given the authority to represent the whole person. Jung wrote, "The ego is not the whole personality, but only its center." From this confusion, the ego begins to act as if everything inside must submit to it, and when inner life does not run by that command, quiet conflict appears. The illusion of the controlling ego arises when people forget that boundary. Because the ego is the only part with language, logic, and the ability to narrate a self-story, it easily believes it is the absolute center. But most of psychological life does not operate through language. It operates through emotion, memory, impulse, and patterns formed very early. When the ego cannot see these factors, it cannot control them, yet it still behaves as if it controls everything. In daily life, this illusion shows up subtly. Someone believes they can manage themselves through schedules, goals, and rules. They design life like a system to optimize. But beneath that surface, there may be accumulated exhaustion, unnamed emotions, or unanswered questions of meaning. When these factors aren't included, the system begins to malfunction, and the ego's first response is not to listen, but to increase control. Jung believed this is exactly where self-sabotage begins to appear. Not as a conscious rebellion, but as a balancing reaction. When the ego tries to force the whole person in a direction the rest does not consent to, resistance appears. And because this resistance is not made conscious, it shows up as stagnation, loss of energy, or choices that pull you back to the old point. Like Sisyphus's boulder, every time you come close to change, an invisible force drags everything back to the starting position. To picture this more clearly, imagine the ego as a rower standing at the front of a boat, seeing only the water ahead and believing they decide the whole journey. They can adjust the rhythm, change direction, and avoid visible obstacles on the surface. But the river has its own current, hidden whirlpools, an underground pull the rower cannot see. When the boat drifts off course, the rower assumes they haven't rowed hard enough, so they push harder. But the more they fight the current, the more the boat shakes, not because the rower is weak, but because they are trying to control what is not fully within their control. The illusion of control makes the ego fail to recognize that many decisions have been prepared by the unconscious before consciousness can intervene. When someone says they suddenly lost motivation, that motivation may have already been withdrawn because a deeper part no longer believes in the path the ego is forcing. But because the ego cannot see that, It interprets the phenomenon as personal weakness. Jung emphasized that losing control is not always negative. Sometimes it is a sign that the ego is being forced to face its limits. And if it is not immediately suppressed, this moment can become the starting point of an inner restructuring. But that only happens when a person dares to reconsider the role of the ego, instead of trying to restore control at any cost. What matters is that Jung did not advocate giving up or living in chaos. He did not call people to abandon responsibility, reason, or planning. He only warned against absolute identification with the ego. When you believe you are your ego, you place on your shoulders a burden you cannot carry. No one can be conscious of and control the entire psychological life all at once. And when you try, the price is often deep exhaustion and a prolonged loop of self-sabotage. The hack, Jung suggested, was not to master yourself more, but to see through the illusion of mastery. When the ego stops believing it must control everything in order to survive, it can step back into its natural place. And then, instead of rolling the boulder up the mountain through blind will, like Sisyphus, a person finally has a chance to understand the structure of the mountain they are facing. That is not surrender, it is the maturity of consciousness. And from that maturity, the self-sabotaging cycle finally gains a chance to unravel, not through force, but through a deeper understanding of the self. Part 3. Persona and the Shadow, the Silent Inner Civil War. From here, once the ego is no longer seen as the absolute controller, a deeper conflict slowly comes into view. It is the silent civil war between the persona, the person you bring out into the world, and the shadow, the part of you you do not want to see, yet has never disappeared. Carl Jung believed human beings do not live as a single unified block, but in fragmentation. The most common fragmentation lies in the distance between the image we believe we should be and the person that exists at a deeper level. The persona is born from the need to adapt. It is the psychological mask that helps you be accepted, be valued, and be safe in society. The persona is not deception, it is necessary. But the tragedy begins when you forget you are wearing a mask and gradually believe the mask is your true face. What does not fit the role does not vanish. It is pushed into the region Jung called the shadow. The shadow does not only contain what is considered negative, it contains everything that is not allowed to appear in the image you are protecting. Anger, ambition, vulnerability, sensitivity, and the longing for freedom. Anything that makes the persona wrong is at risk of being rejected. And from that moment, the silent civil war begins. To picture this conflict clearly, imagine the human mind as a carefully maintained house on the front side. The living room is bright, tidy, and arranged according to proper standards. That is the persona. That is where you welcome guests, where you want others to look. But behind the house is a locked room. In that room, you stuff everything that does not fit the image of a beautiful house. You don't go in there. You also don't want anyone else to see it. But that room isn't empty. It is filled with emotions, needs, and impulses left behind. And over time, the pressure inside grows heavier. Jung believed that when a room has been neglected too long, it will find a way to open the door. Not through words, but through behavior. Not through reason, but through choices that block you. This is exactly when self-sabotage appears. Not as conscious rebellion, but as a balancing response of the entire psychological system. This explains why many people don't sabotage themselves when they are failing. They do it when they are about to rise. Because every step forward is not only an external achievement, it is also the reinforcement of the persona. When the persona becomes too dominant, when your whole life is poured into being right, good, admirable, the shadow reacts. Not because it hates success, but because it does not want to be erased from the story of who you are. Jung wrote a short but sharp line: "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." The shadow does not need to be eliminated, and it is not waiting to be fixed. It only demands to exist in the visible field. When it is pushed outside conscious life, it finds its own path to influence choices, emotions, and behaviors, often in the ways that surprise you most. In that context, self-sabotage is no longer mysterious or hard to understand. It is the language of the shadow. When you live too long inside the persona, when you force yourself to become a version that is accepted, the remaining parts will find a way to speak. And if you do not create space to listen, they will speak in the only way left, breaking the order the persona is struggling to maintain. This is where many people begin to hate themselves. They see themselves doing things that are irrational. They wonder why they behave that way, why they ruin what matters. Jung saw those moments as signs that the psyche is trying to self-correct, not to destroy you, but to bring you closer to the wholeness of who you are. I know a friend named Michael. Michael is the kind of person everyone trusts. He is calm, rational, and always in control of his emotions. At work, he is valued for professionalism. In relationships, he is the stable one, rarely causing trouble. But Michael frequently falls into exhaustion without understanding why. He sabotages promotion opportunities at the last minute, procrastinates important projects, and sometimes explodes in anger over very small situations. Looking deeper, it becomes clear, to maintain the persona of the rational man, he pushed all messy emotion into the shadow. And at some point, those repressed parts had to speak. Jung did not see this as a personal failure. He saw it as an invitation to examine the structure of one's psychological life. This part is not meant to make you distrust yourself or hate your persona. On the contrary, it invites you to see persona and shadow as two forces that must be placed into the right relationship. The persona helps you live in the world. The shadow helps you live fully with yourself. When either one is rejected, the person becomes unbalanced. And prolonged imbalance always leads to self-sabotage. The lesson Jung left here is not be authentic at all costs, and not throw away the mask. He only emphasized that no one can live healthily when a part of themselves is imprisoned in darkness. Psychological maturity does not come from becoming a perfect image. It comes from accepting your own complexity. When you stop treating the shadow as an enemy and begin to see it as a part carrying important information, the civil war finally has a chance to turn into dialogue. And if you feel this part touches something familiar, something deeply personal, maybe it's not only you listening to this video. Maybe a part of you is listening too. If you find value in this video, share it with someone you believe needs to hear these words. Sometimes, real dialogue doesn't begin with answers. It begins with knowing you are not alone in that silent inner civil war. Part 4. Hack the brain with Jung. Don't suppress. Dialogue. When you begin to realize that your self-sabotaging behaviors do not come from weakness, but from a quiet conflict inside, a subtle turning point appears. The question is no longer how to control yourself better. It is how to stop having to fight yourself. This is where a real kind of brain hack begins. Not through coercion or manipulation, but by changing how you relate to your inner life. Most of us are taught that to change, we must become stronger, more disciplined, more rational. But for Jung, that is the road to dead ends. Jung did not see the human psyche as a machine to be controlled, but as a living system. And every living system resists when controlled through violence, even the refined violence called self-discipline. According to Jung, people do not sabotage themselves because they lack willpower, but because they have used the wrong strategy to run their inner world. When you treat emotions, impulses, and unconscious reactions as things that must be extinguished, the brain does not become more cooperative. It becomes defensive. And this defensiveness rarely shows up openly. It appears as procrastination, impulsivity, or decisions that even you cannot understand. Look at our most familiar reflex when uncomfortable feelings arise. When sad, we force ourselves to think positively. When angry, we demand that we calm down immediately. When afraid, we blame ourselves for being weak. These reflexes sound reasonable and are even socially encouraged. But Jung believed this is exactly where inner splitting begins. Suppression does not make an emotion disappear. It only pushes that emotion out of the conscious field, where you no longer see it and no longer have a direct relationship with it. What is worth noting is that this mechanism fits the way the brain is described in modern science. Many studies point out that suppressing thoughts and emotions often creates a rebound effect. The brain does not work efficiently with the command, "don't." When you try not to think, not to feel, not to react, the brain still has to keep that very content active to monitor whether it returns. That constant monitoring increases the intensity of what is suppressed, making it return stronger, often at the moments you have the least control. This is why the more people try to control themselves, the more out of control they feel. Not because they lack discipline, but because they are fighting a living system with inner violence. Jung wrote a short line that goes straight to the core. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Hacking the brain, for Jung, does not begin by denying darkness. It begins by bringing it into the visible field. When a part is recognized by consciousness, it no longer needs to break your life structure to be allowed to exist. From here, the central concept of this part appears: dialogue. Dialogue, for Jung, is not talking to yourself with positive phrases. It is not self-fixing or self-persuading. Dialogue is a psychological attitude, the willingness to stay with an inner experience long enough that it no longer needs to scream. When an emotion arises, our usual reflex is to intervene immediately. We want to fix it, explain it, or remove it. But Jung proposed another direction, allowing the emotion to exist in consciousness without rushing into action. Don't act it out, but don't push it away either. At that moment, your relationship with the emotion has already changed. You are no longer fully controlled by it, and you no longer need to suppress it. You can imagine this process like tuning an orchestra. If you try to silence an instrument completely because you think it is playing wrong, the music doesn't become better. It becomes poorer and loses depth. But when you listen to the whole orchestra, including the harsh and uncomfortable sounds, only then can you adjust toward harmony. Dialogue does not remove the off parts. It helps place them in the right position within the whole. In everyday life, this has a very concrete application. When you notice yourself procrastinating, instead of forcing yourself to finish at all costs, slow down and recognize that a part of you does not consent. No need to argue, no need to persuade, just acknowledge it. When that part is seen, it no longer needs to sabotage the process from within. Similarly, when an anger that seems irrational rises, don't rush to extinguish it. Stay with the feeling long enough for it to be recognized. Many emotions do not need to be solved. They only need to be seen. And in many cases, being seen alone is enough for them to no longer need to erupt. Hacking the brain with Jung does not become stronger. It is reducing inner violence. When you stop treating yourself like an object that must be controlled, you free up enormous energy that was being spent fighting yourself. And that energy is often what you believe you are missing in order to change. Tomorrow morning, when an uncomfortable feeling appears, you can try something very small. Don't fix it, don't analyze it, don't run away. Just slow down, breathe evenly. Allow the feeling to remain in your attention for a few minutes. No action needed, no conclusion needed. Only let it be seen. This is not giving up. This is the first step of dialogue. Jung believed true transformation does not come from victory, but from reconciliation. Not reconciliation with the world, but with the parts of you that were once abandoned. When you stop suppressing, you stop creating enemies within. And when there is no enemy, the psyche no longer has a reason to sabotage itself. From that moment, another process begins, not loud, not explosive, but quiet and profound. Jung called that process individuation. Part 5. Individuation. When the inner war ends, self-sabotage disappears too. If inner dialogue is no longer a temporary effort, but becomes a way of living, what happens when a person no longer has to pull themselves in two opposing directions? This is where the entire journey leads. Carl Jung called it individuation, not as a dazzling destination, but as a quiet process in which a person stops living in inner division just to survive. Individuation is not becoming a better version by society's standards. Jung never tied this concept to success, morality, or surface happiness. For him, individuation is the process of gradually becoming the whole person you already are, instead of living only as the part that is accepted and displayed outwardly. When the inner civil war between persona and shadow ends, not because one side is eliminated or subdued, but because no side is pushed out anymore, self-sabotage slowly loses its psychological function. A long-time follower of the channel once left a short line that carried weight. I used to think I always ruined everything at the important moment. After following the channel for a while, I stopped trying to fix myself and started looking straight at what I always avoided. From then on, I no longer had to ruin things to escape my own life. Through Jung's lens, this isn't just behavioral change. It is a sign that individuation has begun to touch real life, where a person no longer needs destruction to create room to breathe. Jung believed many self-sabotaging behaviors do not come from weakness or lack of discipline, but from a deeper intelligence of the psyche. When a person lives too far from their true self, the unconscious will try to pull them back. At first, through a vague discomfort, then through inner conflict, and finally through behaviors that disrupt life. But when you begin living closer to yourself, those strong signals are no longer necessary. The psyche doesn't need to shout when it is being heard. Individuation does not make you perfect. It makes you truer. You still have tired days, confused moments, and difficult choices. But one thing changes clearly. You no longer feel you are betraying yourself just to survive. And that quiet betrayal is the fertile ground where self-sabotage grows. When it disappears, destruction has no reason to continue. Jung said something simple but profound. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not everyone uses that privilege, not because they aren't smart or strong enough, but because they are too busy becoming what others expect. Individuation begins when you stop asking, "Who should I be?" and dare to face the far harder question, "Who am I when I don't have to perform?" When individuation happens, the way you see failure changes too. Failure is no longer proof that you are inadequate. It becomes a sign that something in you has not been lived truthfully yet. Instead of rushing to fix or blame yourself, you can pause and listen, not with an accusing attitude, but with curiosity and respect. Jung saw this as a sign of psychological maturity, where a person no longer needs to punish themselves in order to move forward. To make this process easier to feel, imagine your inner life as an orchestra that has been playing out of time. Each instrument has its own tone, but when they do not listen to one another, the music becomes chaotic. The listener only hears noise, and the players feel tense and exhausted. Individuation is not removing any instrument, it is learning to listen so harmony can form. When the sounds begin to fit, the music doesn't have to try to be beautiful. It naturally becomes full. Self-sabotage is the offbeat sound of an orchestra not yet harmonized. Hacking the brain with Jung is not controlling thoughts or managing emotions. It is changing the relationship between you and yourself. When the ego no longer has to play the harsh gatekeeper, when it allows other parts to coexist, your decisions no longer come from fear or defense. They come from an inner sense of fit. And when that fit is present, you no longer need to sabotage yourself to correct your life. Individuation also brings a different kind of peace. Not peace because everything is fine, but because you no longer have to run from yourself. You can stay with uncomfortable feelings without fearing you'll be swallowed. You can change without feeling you are betraying your real self. And you can fail without punishing yourself. When individuation unfolds, a person no longer needs to play a role to live. Behavior becomes more consistent, not because you are more disciplined, but because you are no longer fighting yourself. You still grow, still learn, but you no longer feel pulled back by an invisible force. And here, self-sabotage disappears, not like an enemy defeated, but like a mechanism that has completed its mission. The deepest lesson of this journey is not how much more you understand Carl Jung. It is that you stop seeing yourself as a problem to fix. Jung did not invite people to become good. He invited them to become whole. When no part of you is cast out, the psyche has no reason to resist. The inner war ends not through victory, but through reconciliation. And when reconciliation happens, life is no longer a place where you must constantly fight yourself. It becomes a space where you can be present, choose, and walk in a truer way. not perfect, but true enough that you no longer need to sabotage yourself just to be allowed to live. To close this journey, what matters most is not that you learned to control yourself better, but that you understood why your brain used to pull you back into self-sabotaging loops. Jung believed self-sabotaging is not a failure of will, but the result of a divided mind. When the parts within are not recognized, the brain is forced to hack you back through behaviors that slow you down, make you quit, or make you ruin what you are building. Hacking the brain for Jung is not forcing yourself to be more disciplined or more positive. It is changing how you relate to your own mind. When you stop suppressing the unconscious, stop identifying completely with the controlling ego, and begin to dialogue with the parts that were pushed into shadow, the inner system reorganizes itself. The inner war ends, and self-sabotage has no reason to exist. What remains is not a perfect person, but a person who fits themselves. You still face hardship, but you no longer need to pull yourself back just to breathe. The brain no longer fights you because you stopped fighting yourself. If what you just heard made you slow down even a little, a like can be your way of honoring that moment. And if you want to keep exploring the depth of the human mind through Carl Jung's lens, subscribe so we can keep walking this path together.